Special guest joining us on the line, our pilot in residence, Captain Patrick Smith.
Indeed we do. Patrick, thanks for joining the show today. Listen, last week we reported on that Air Canada jet that landed on a taxiway at San Francisco International Airport as opposed to the runway. And there were 4 planes waiting on that taxiway, and fortunately he pulled up just in time not to smack into a couple of them, which would have been probably the worst air disaster in the history of the world. But why this happened hasn't been revealed or received much coverage except on this show and your blog, which is called AskThePilot.com. So that's why we're turning to you today. And my first thought was the pilots were distracted. They weren't paying close attention because it was a clear night. The taxiway lights are different colors than runway lights. So I thought, well, maybe they set the autopilot slightly off. Is that a possible scenario?
No, not likely.
Right.
When this first happened, Rudy, when I first started reading about it and seeing the different reports, I thought it was a serious story, but I thought it was overblown, if those two things aren't exclusive. But the more I've learned, especially in recent days, the more serious it seems to have been, up to the point of being about as close to a near miss as you really can get. They were alarmingly close to striking at least one of the taxiing aircraft. And of course, the billion-dollar question, how did they get in that situation to begin with?
Right, I mean, you're a pilot. You fly big airplanes, big passenger airplanes. How could that happen? Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, the runway 28 right at SFO is a big, modern runway equipped with all the electronic landing aids and fancy lighting that you find on most big runways, and the aiming point should have been pretty obvious, even in the dark, even late at night. But that said, San Francisco Airport has quirks. There are 4 parallel strips, 2 runways and 2 parallel taxiways, all very close to each other. The approaches tend to be very high workload. You have non-precision approaches to that runway that are pretty common. You don't use the standard ILS, which guides you electronically right to the threshold. It's more of a combination of instruments and a visual procedure, and the last part of it really doesn't have specific electronic guidance. It's just looking out the window. And you may have had fatigue playing a role here, all different things. I mean, those aren't excuses, but under the right set of circumstances, I can kind of see this happening.
Patrick, let me ask, Robert Carey here. But assuming this is just simply a case of pilot error, I mean, let's talk about the airport with the quirks that you just said. Do you think the airport itself, played a role here? Like if they were landing in Seattle or Denver, we might be able to rule out the airport?
Well, this sort of thing has happened elsewhere, too. It's the kind of thing where when you have a certain combination of circumstances, it can happen. It shouldn't happen, but every once in a while it does. And another question people are wondering, why didn't the air traffic controllers warn these guys sooner? In their defense, the taxiway and the runway are close together, and the controllers would have been watching from a pretty good angle, which throws off their perspective. And I don't know if their radar would have shown anything either, because planes tend to zig and zag a little bit sometimes on final approach. And at a certain point, when you clear a plane to land, you expect the pilots to know the difference between a runway and a taxiway, and ultimately that's what this comes down to.
Right. A lot of moving parts here. Hi, Patrick. It's Mary.
Hey.
Patrick, I have a question about the investigation. So now we've had the incident. It's under investigation. I'm curious what happens to the pilots in a situation like this who were flying the aircraft. Are they still able to fly, or are they not able to fly under the investigation?
That really varies situation to situation, airline to airline. I don't know how Air Canada's in-house protocols would work on this sort of thing, but obviously they would be looking at it very intensively.
Right.
It's just an amazing story, and we'll follow it with interest. We're all so grateful it didn't happen. Hey, Patrick, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, Rudy. Anytime.
And fly safely. You can follow Patrick at AskThePilot.com or pick up his book. It's called Cockpit Confidential. In fact, I was just at Midway Airport in Chicago, and the whole window in the bookstore, it seems like there's a big billboard of Cockpit Confidential up there. Patrick's got good PR. Up next.